I know you've built up a really strong infrastructure for yourselves and your employees, and I know some of that is rooted in what you studied at Michigan, your Russian studies. Is that, and you talk a lot about servant leadership, is all that something that you saw in practice when you were coming out of college? Was there another
No, I never
restaurant?
even heard of it.
Gotcha. So that was completely,
Well, I didn't go in. I didn't go into. I mean, we didn't open when I got out of college. That was 4
yeah,
years after I
right.
finished school. So, I mean, I only got into the food business by accident, really, because I needed a job, and one of my roommates was waiting tables at a restaurant. And after applying 3 times, ultimately the only job I could get with them was washing dishes. So that's how I started. But I didn't have any big ideals about what I was going to do other than pay my bills and keep going. Um, but servant leadership, no, we learned about it. I don't know, maybe 10 years after we had opened. It came from Robert Greenleaf's book, Servant Leadership.
So, can you dive into a little bit your business model and how servant leadership has kind of correlated with the success of Zingerman's community of businesses?
Well, business model and servant leadership are probably two different things. But I mean, obviously everything's related. But servant leadership, like I said, comes from Greenleaf's writing. His book came out, I think, in 1979. It was written not just for business, but also for nonprofits and educational institutions. Um, he The basic premise of it, or our takeaway from it, I mean, the basic premise is essentially that the leader's number one responsibility is to serve the organization, not the other way around. Which might seem, when one says that, everybody kind of nods their head. But if you really look at it, in general, people start businesses to serve themselves and not to serve the organization. So what that would imply is essentially Paul and I, we're around, we're paid in order to help the organization get to greatness, and as part of that is to help the people in the organization get to greatness. Uh, it's essentially, long before you were born, but John Kennedy's famous statement: "Ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country." And then what we've done with servant leadership, and then a lot of these approaches, is to take them out of inspirational philosophical statements and turn them into practical steps or lists that people can learn how to do and feel good that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. So we have 6 elements of servant leadership, which I wrote about in part 2 of the book, which is on leadership, which I can get into if you want.
Sure. If you don't mind diving into that a little bit.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, so these are the 6 that we say in our organization. If you're being an effective servant leader, you're doing these 6 things. You're providing vision, which you already touched on, because we use vision not just for the organization overall, but for everything. Uh, it's pretty clear to me that it's a skill. It's a approach that everybody who's succeeding in pretty much anything has, whether it's parenting or writing poetry or leading a sports team. The leader always has a vision, and hopefully the people on the group share the vision if it's going to be effective. The second thing is to give service to the staff. So literally, when I go to work every day, I think about the people who work in the organization as my customers, and literally all the same things that apply between me and you as a customer would apply between me and them. The third thing is to manage in an ethical manner, which sounds straightforward, but I think mostly in the press people focus on like super unethical things, stealing or
Right.
murder or whatever. But those aren't really the difficult issues. The difficult issues are what we have right now. You asked about what's going on. We furloughed 300 people last week. Which is horrible. Uh, but we're in the same boat everybody else is, which is if you don't act quickly, we're not going to be here for people to have a job permanently.
Yep.
Um, and that's the kind of ethical struggle that's, trying to find the right path through a difficult and uncharted waters. I guess you can't have a path in waters, but the right route
Right.
through uncharted waters. The fourth thing would be actively learning and actively teaching. The fifth is to help the staff succeed. So this is really where, instead of what most organizations have, which is that the staff are hired to help the leader. This is where the leader's hired to help the staff. So my job essentially is to help everybody who works in the organization get to greatness. And if I do that well, then I think it's implicit that, I or Paul and I or whoever are also going to be getting to greatness. And then the sixth one is to say thanks. So to essentially lead the way in making it an appreciative organization.